in order to create anything and make it manifest in life, any dream, any vision, any heart's wish, if you will, you have got to focus that energy and intention, but not just focusing it with a hope and a wish and a prayer. You've got to change that belief system and know beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is yours.
Angelique, how are you today?
I'm good, Vic. How are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you for making time for the 10,000 miles crew here today. I really appreciate your time.
No, thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Hey, for the audience, little bit of a stalker alert here. I met Angelique virtually via LinkedIn. You know, she started coming up in my feed. I started reading some of her posts. For those of you who are not on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you're on a lot of social media platforms, but on LinkedIn, your stories are fantastic. Your guidance and your positivity is very infectious. I really enjoy what you write. I like it. It's uplifting, it's positive, it's, it's self-healing, so to speak, really about confidence in yourself and taking your own journey. I got so interested in it that I reached out to Angelique via direct message and said, hey, I got this show. Here's a link. Here's a link to the show. Here's my LinkedIn profile. So you could find that I'm not a maniac who's stalking you. And she, with wit responded back, well, I'm glad you're not a maniac. So here we are today. So thank you again for coming on. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you. And thank you for the kind words about the writing and how it's affected you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's really great. Hey, so we had our little pre-call and I got to learn a little bit about what you're doing. The audience is behind me. So why don't you catch them up? Tell people, who you are, what you're doing now, and then we'll dig back into the story.
Well, I am a writer, director, producer. I have my own company called STARR Films that I incorporated in 2008. I have been a writer probably since the time I was a child. I have massive amounts of journals. I have massive amounts of notebooks of, thoughts and ideas. And I was obsessed with movies as a kid. Super, super obsessed. So I think and I was also obsessed with being a performer. I was in musical theater. I was on stage. I was singing. I was dancing. At the time, dancing not well, but I was certainly out there doing it. And I didn't actually become a good dancer until I started teaching ballroom dance, which was later on.
Wow.
Yeah, I taught at Arthur Murray, at Fred Astaire. And then I went on to compete in American Rhythm, which was super cool. I took the dance all the way. But my heart was always with storytelling, right? I always wanted to be in the movies or making movies. And at the time, I really thought I wanted to be behind the scenes, right? But I was so in love with the performing part of it. I was like, no. You've got to be in front of the camera. So for a large part of my career, that's what I was doing. I was trying to do the in front of the camera. And I got on the New York City stage and in the New York City theater scene, which is still my absolute favorite place to be.
Great place.
Oh, God, yeah. There's nothing like it in the whole world when you get to stand there in that connection with the audience and you feel the energy and they feel your energy. And it's just kind of this symbiotic relationship and you get to tell a story. And truthfully, one of the plays that I did sucked, but all that aside, it was still a lot of fun to have this interaction with the audience. And I love that. But I did think about stories and the kinds of stories that were out there. And I wanted to tell things from my perspective, not just a female perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my personal perspective. So at 30, I decided to go to film school. And I was like, let's go. We're going to go learn how to do this ourselves. We're going to do all the behind the scenes. We're going to write, we're going to direct. And it was me and a bunch of 18-year-olds, which was fascinating. You know, when you're 30 and they're 18 and you're realizing like how different you guys actually are, right?
Can I
But
ask
they
a
were my
question
crew.
about that? When you were
Yeah.
30 and they were 18 to 20, how did you
Yeah.
feel?
Um,
Did you feel
well,
disconnected? Did you feel joined in what you're working on? I'm going to tell you why I'm asking here in a second, but I'm just curious as to how you felt.
okay. I I always think of my like I don't have an age thing in terms of how I feel, right?
Okay.
I recognize number because I have been alive 30 years, right?
Yeah.
But I never was I wasn't with them in a way where I felt like, oh my God, I'm this older person and they're this younger. I just kind of hung out with them as myself. And I almost took on this more, I don't want to say maternal role, but they were
Hmm.
constantly to me with like life problems and things that were going on in their world. And what I loved about them was they were respectful in that way. They never looked at me like, oh God, the old lady in our class, you know, they would come and be like, let's go do this. Let's go do that. And anytime I had what they would call a production, what's it called? It was called a piece. I can't even remember. My God, Rick, it was so long ago. Um, anyway, it was like a production workshop, right? And, they would show up and they would be there and they would do the job the best that they could. And they really, even when I remember I did Serena's song, which was my thesis film for Newark Film Academy, they showed up on set, those kids, and they worked their asses off. I
Wow.
mean, really just showing up for me in a way that, you know, friends of mine didn't show up for me. So I had a great experience with that. Um, and I am still to this day friends with the majority of those kids. I get the
I love it.
pictures of a baby. They're sending me the pictures of their new babies. Um, all of the things that they're doing, the projects that they're working on. I've got to go see some stuff on the screen, other stuff because they're foreign. I would have to watch it uh, digitally, but it was a really cool experience for me.
I'm going to tell you why I ask. I talk to a lot of people who are either just coming out of college or maybe they left college because they were uncertain about what they want to do. And when I encourage them to do something else, because I changed careers in my early 30s, I was in the music business. I knew nothing else. I knew recording studios. I knew writing. I knew production. Pardon me. And I got married and things changed and I had to adapt and I jumped into technology. So I changed and evolved myself in my early 30s and never really thought of myself as behind.
Right.
Right. I just didn't have that feeling. It was like, here I am now. But I talk to the generation of people that are maybe thinking about changing a major or going back to college, or they didn't go, but now they're 23, 24, 25. And I get this overwhelming sense that from them that they think it's too late. They're old. If they only knew, like, it's too late. And so the reason I want to extract this story a little bit is because there's something I didn't expect that came from it, which I think is a great nugget here to leave behind. Like, you'll have a role no matter your age. So you came with, another decade of wisdom and experience, but you were a peer in the class environment, so to speak, right? And
Yeah.
so you were able to embrace that role and take on that role. So for anybody who's listening that might be on the other side of that, thinking about their reinvention, and quite frankly, in any reinvention, no matter your age, there is a role for you in there. And I think that's the point that I wanted to extract. I didn't expect you to tell that story today, but I'm happy you did. So it's really cool. Hey, if you don't mind, because I don't want to lose it, and I made a little note here about your dancing. I don't want to just gloss over that as I danced, I wasn't good, and then I took it all the way, and you're not going to hear any more about that. So,
Okay.
I think it's, from our first conversation, I saw you light up when you talked about it. And I said, oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to write that down, because she had a big smile on her face when she brought that up. And I want to see where that smile came from. So how did you get into dance? What was that journey like? And tell me why you're smiling like you are right now when we talk about it.
Well, because I do think that on everyone's journey, there's something that comes into your life that changes it forever, right? For good or for bad.
Mhm.
But I had that with ballroom dance because I was super lost. I was 18 when I first got. I was super lost. I started going to college, but realized very quickly college wasn't for me. I didn't want to do it. And I was like, this is not the journey for me. There's
Yeah.
something else for me. I need to follow, what that is, regardless of what society says I should be doing, right? And I end up meeting this girl in my class who said to me, oh, yeah, my friend Peter works at Arthur Murray and they're hiring if you want to go. Now, my friend at the time, he and I had done this Talent America where he roped me into doing a routine with him. We ended up going to Talent America and performing at the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City, and we won it, right? And I thought, oh my God, it's the most
Wow.
amazing thing I've ever experienced. And I'm 18 and I love this. And I remember we danced to Ricky Martin and we had this full Latin dance. And the United States champions at the time, it was Lisa Regal and Tony Dovolani. And Tony is well known because of Dancing with the Stars, but Lisa was his partner at that time. And she lent me her dress. And I just remember feeling like, this is what I want to do.
Wow.
Dance like this all the time, not just once in a while. And so, yeah, I got that bug and I went for it. And I went to Arthur Murray and I met the owners there and they hired me. And what Arthur Murray will do is they will train you. If you've ever seen Dirty Dancing, right? That iconic,
Yeah. Of
when
course.
he's the log and he's talking about Arthur Murray and he says, they brought us in, taught us how to dance. That is exactly what they do, right? So,
So
and Dirty
cool.
Dancing is one of my favorite movies as a kid, because my aunt, who I would stay with over the summer, only had two movies, Top Gun and Dirty Dancing, right?
Not a
And
bad two to have if you only have two movies. You're going to keep
and,
watching those.
and she was, because she always watched the Italian station, so she was like, and we would stay with her, and we'd be like, "Do we have anything else?" And she'd be like, "What's this movie? You, you, you know, like, nope, nope, we're good. Hold on that wooden spoon. We will totally watch Top Gun and Dirty Dancing ad nauseum. But it did kind of,
It's just like, it's like a throwback to my family. I just love it.
right? Oh, they're all the same across the board,
Yeah.
right? It's like the minute you say anything, they're like, what? And you're like, nope, we're good. Whatever it is you said,
That's so great.
I retract my statement. So, those two movies were my thing. And here I was, so I wasn't going to be a pilot by any means, but I was going to be a ballroom dancer. And
Okay.
that was so cool. And I got involved with Arthur Murray and, um, I have such full circle moment with Arthur Murray. That's just wild. But, they saved my life, right? Being a kid that suffered from depression and low self-esteem and not feeling that you belong anywhere, you walk into a world like that, it's completely different. You become a completely different person. And you do all of a sudden have confidence. And now you have a skill set. And not only do you have a skill set, but you're meeting all these really cool people who are wanting that skill set. And you
Mm.
have this, how to teach them. And it was cool. And I always say, like, it pulled me out of that depression in that time. And it took me to, you know, places that I never thought I would go. I never thought I would be competing um, at all in
Did you,
that
and you
way.
continue to compete?
Yeah. Like
How'd
it's,
that go for you?
it was great. I remember we placed very well. We never got first place, but we got third. And we weren't supposed to get past the quarterfinal, right? So, I remember going up to my coach and being like, my God, we weren't supposed to get past, the quarterfinal. And he's like, well, you danced like shit. And I was like, but we got third place though. And he's like, well, you danced like better shit than everyone else. So I was like, I'll take it.
My
I'll
God, so
only
much
need,
fun.
it was great. And I always look for the positive, even though I've struggled with what they call congenital melancholy,
Okay.
which I thought was a fake kind of diagnosis when my therapist first said it to me. But ultimately, it's not as heavy as depression.
Okay.
It's kind of this general sadness, right? This general kind of like feeling that things are tougher or life is tougher or whatever. And that dancing was able to pull me out of that. Like, it brought me a completely different uh, perspective, which then contributed to my stupidly optimistic self that was kind of born out of that experience, right?
Fantastic.
Where, yeah. So I say to people all the time, your heart is going to take you exactly where you need for you. That may not be college. That may not be working, in a corporation. You don't know where that's going to be or what that's going to be, but you've got to follow that because any other, deviation off that heart path is a self-betrayal. And you won't know that until you get to a point where the heart brings you back.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned on my journey is that the heart will always bring you back to the thing that is the best for you if you're willing to listen, right?
Yeah. And you're willing
That's
to take the cues too, as well, because a lot of people get the cues and don't respond to the cues. It's a tough place, and
yeah,
this is part of your writing. What you're speaking right now. A lot of this comes out in the things you post and you talk about and you encourage. And it's, why I became interested in having a deeper conversation with you. Um, I tell my kids all the time, I think the best skill you could have is being able to adapt to change and willing to accept the change that's coming your way, but also to have a passion no matter what you do. Like, because if you kind of do stuff half-assed, you feel crappy. It's not good. You got to really be into it. And I think if I look back on my life, let's say over the last 30 years, and somebody sat me down and said, I'm going to map you out exactly what's going to happen over the next 30 years. And this is the time frame. Here it is. Here's your Gantt chart. I would have said,
yeah,
never going to happen. Just not. I didn't know, but I was just willing to adapt and change and embrace it. It's funny. I posted a picture on my Instagram of my desk. It's got my lights, got the backstop, the mixer, the microphone, all this stuff. My other laptop was sitting right here at the time. I work here as well. This is a passion project for me, the podcast. And so I posted it, and somebody I knew, oh gosh, well, I've known them now for probably 35 years, said, your studio's back. Because I used to own a recording studio in Westfield, New Jersey. And she was a high-end fashion photographer who had a giant space on the third floor of this building. And her name is Nadine. She's great. And I said, sort of kind of Nadine, but it really never left,
yeah,
And yeah, you find all these new things and you've got to be willing to accept them moving on. So you went, you did the dance thing, right?
yeah.
What, how did you evolve away from that into something else? Like how did the journey continue?
So, I met my biological father when I was 22. And this was around the time that I was working at a dance studio called Long Island Dance Sport, and it was kind of falling under, like they were dissolving it or whatever. My father shows up on the scene, and my father says to me, my father's a crazy character, of the batshit variety, and he says, "Oh, I heard, and by the way, my dad was out of my life for 13 years. So when he
Okay.
says things, oh, I heard this and this, it's because he was estranged. Um, he said, I heard that, you wanted to do the acting thing and you were doing the musical thing and we got to put you in New York City. And I thought, well, maybe this is something calling me back, right? So I knew I wasn't going to have the job at Long Island Dance for it. I knew I was going
Hmm.
to have to start all over again in another studio, and I wasn't really sure I wanted to, right? So I thought, well, this path is open. Let's see what this takes me. Let's see what happens if I say yes and I go to New York City and now all of a sudden this world is open to me. So I did. And I taught dance on the side, like just private lessons, not for a studio. But I never went back to a studio after that.
Okay.
Um, I went completely full speed ahead to the acting, singing, theater world. And I got my headshots and I did the whole thing, you
Yeah.
know, going on auditions and getting little stuff here. Everybody in New York City, everybody goes on Law and Order. Everybody at the time when I was doing it, everybody was on Sex in the City. Like you could get into those shows if you were a working actor. And it's funny, my husband was on a ton of episodes of Law and Order, but he had
Okay.
speaking. And it was just that New York City actor life. And I loved it. I didn't really think, I didn't miss the dancing because I was still kind of doing it just in a performance way. But I was totally throwing myself into this other world. I was like, this is fun too. This is like a completely different kind of fun, but I love it. And all the while, Vic, which was interesting because the through line of my life always brings me back to writing. Uh, I would write monologues for my friends to go have their auditions because the biggest complaint everybody would have is, oh, it's the same friggin' thing. Everybody's using the same tired old stuff
Hmm.
and find things that vibed with them. And I would just ask them a couple of questions about their life, kind of figure out where they were in, like how they projected their avatars. And I was able to craft something that was very specific to them. So I would be doing that on the side as a side hustle. Like, oh, you need a monologue? I'll write this to you. Here you go. No problem.
How long are those
Um,
monologues typically?
I would do 2 paragraphs at the most because you would want to get in and out, right? So if it were something more, like if they were going after Shakespeare, they've got to audition with Shakespeare.
Yeah.
They were going to be coming to me. But if they were auditioning for, a television show or a series or some sort of play, their first round for a play would be their own. Then if they got a call back, they would probably be using a monologue from whatever play or whatever scene that they were auditioning for. Um, so I loved that even at that time, that was just kind of going as a through line. The writing was just kind of following me around, even though it's not what I wanted to do, because at that point I was like, oh no, I'm an actress. That's that's my new job. That's my new thing. Look out, world. I'm coming. Look out, Hollywood. Yeah. They didn't have to worry about me. I never got there. So
It's
let
a
me
tough,
see.
it's a tough journey. It's a tough journey.
I never wanted, and this is again like being super honest about, where you may have dropped the ball, but I had a couple of opportunities that I didn't take. Um, I don't know why. I had such a love affair with New York City. I didn't want to go. I remember I went out to LA. I was auditioning for this project. It was all set, you know. And I remember getting out there and I'm with one of my good friends and I looked at him and I was like, this is not my vibe. I don't like this. We went to a we went to a restaurant and no joke. I'm sitting like, one of those banquettes that's like circular. And
Hmm.
this thing comes up on the side and it's a girl. And she looks over and she says, is there anyone here that I should know? And I
Yeah.
thought, get me the hell out of here. I
I
do
have a
not.
friend who moved to LA many, many, many years ago. We were younger, and he was a aspiring writer. So he did the whole write during the day, work at Duke's or, some
Yeah.
other place at night and would meet people. But, and he's a New Yorker guy through and through. And he said, yeah, he said, you know what I've come to learn about LA and in the business. And this is decades ago. I said, what's that? He said, you know, if somebody wants to say something to you in New York, like go F yourself, they just say, go F yourself. Like, hey, how'd you like to get together and work on a project? Go F yourself, right? He said in LA, it's like, go F yourself is equivalent to, I'll call you.
Right.
Yeah. He said, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, let's do that. I'll call you. He goes, so it's the same thing. You just you have to find the cues.
Yeah. It's true. And I prefer the no, you
Yeah,
know,
of course,
I,
because
I don't,
you can save your energy and move on. I had a
well, you're not,
similar spot in my life, Angelique. In the early 90s, I lost my publishing deal. I was a signed writer at the time to Polygram Music. Music was changing. Nirvana came out. The whole Seattle thing was blowing up. And I had an opportunity to relocate to Nashville.
oh, wow.
And there was a big writing community there still in the 90s, very small now. There were the writing scene in Nashville in the 80s, 90s, and obviously prior was massive. Hundreds of writers, all collaborating, writing, working, getting, the publishing was massive. There's like a couple dozen of them now at best
Wow.
in Nashville that have the name, and especially because the money earned through publishing is way different than it was, decades ago. But I didn't go. I don't know why I didn't go. I wasn't ready. Nobody from my family really ever moved anywhere. When my wife and I relocated to Colorado in 2004, you would have
Yeah.
thought we were moving to Kazakhstan. I got the intervention calls from my family. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Where do you think you're going? You're going to ruin the family. You're breaking up the family. And then in '07, we came to Texas, and they thought we were only going to be here for 3 years and then move back to the Northeast in 2010. And we had an opportunity to do it. In the 11th hour, we didn't pull the trigger because we just sort of found here something I didn't think would be easy to recreate. At the time, I was commuting a lot. 11 miles from the airport, not in the flight path. Easy.
Yeah.
DFW is a great airport. Community is great. Schools were great. There's not a lot of snow here to speak of. We get a nice storm every decade or so. But, I understand. I understand you get these spots. But to your point in your spirit, like you made a choice and here's your life. And,
Yeah.
and that's all just a part of it. And you can only look forward. You can't look back. If you look back with regret, it's a poison for the future.
I also think that you are exactly where you're meant to be.
Yeah.
You really are. We discount our wisdom all the time. We say, oh man, I should have blah, blah, blah. I should have blah, blah, blah. Sure, you could have, right? But you don't get to see the macrocosm. You only get to see the microcosm.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know how that choice would have played out. And we'd like to think that the choices that we don't make would have been better, but we don't know that for sure. So we may have made an alternate choice that was not as good as the one that we made. And like if we could look back and say, wow, like almost have that sliding doors moment, is that choice the best choice, right? Because I could have gone to LA and had the worst time ever, which is what I think would have happened. I don't think I would have got into the vibe.
Yeah. If you didn't feel it, it wouldn't work.
No, and I moved to Connecticut and cried every day about missing New York. So could you imagine if I went to California?
Oh, wow.
I
That
mean,
would have been
I
nuts.
know, like I realized about myself in that moment when I'm over there hyperventilating on a couch and I'm only 45 minutes away. No, this wasn't going to work out for you, sister. No matter how beautiful palm trees are and sunshine and weather, I like the New York City hustle, bustle, the theater, the lights, the loud, the fuck you. I like all of that.
I love it.
I can't, yeah. I know for me personally on my journey, and I love people that are real, right? For good or for bad, they are what you can see is what you get. And you get a lot of that here in
You
these
do.
areas. You do. You get a lot of what you see is what you get, where you're not guessing like the minute you walk out of the room, they're you kind of know. Like, nope,
Yeah, my
these
wife says
people,
the same thing. She misses her people. We've got great friends here in Texas that we adore, but we often talk about it. And she says, I miss my people. And
yeah.
I don't know if it's a West Coast thing more than it is a Hollywood thing, because the work environment is so competitive. Everybody's, you got hundreds of people vying for the same role. I got a secret I'm not going to tell you. I got a connection I'm not going to let you know about. I'm not going to pull you along. I don't want to help you. It used to be like that to a certain extent in the music business. We talk about the difference between the East Coast vibe and the Seattle vibe. And I talk about this with a friend of mine who had some cool success in the music business. He's like, yeah, when I was putting my bands together on the East Coast, it was almost like these little gangs, it's like, and you didn't want them to hear your songs, and you didn't want to know about the gear and the tones they were using. And then when the Seattle thing blew up in the 90s, like all those bands got together and did shows together. Hey, if you could bring 100 people and I can bring 100 people and, 5 bands play at the same time, now we got 500 people come to this place. Maybe they'll like your music and they'll like mine, and like we could all build this great thing, because they're not going to like one band. Who likes one band? People like a lot of different artists. So that was different. And I don't know that exists in Hollywood. Does that exist in the theater in New York?
Yes. Yes. Theater folk are very interesting. You can get a lot of theater people that want to pull into a collaboration with you because they understand. And interestingly enough, Hollywood should operate the same way, in the sense that everything is collaboration. But there has been so much competition and
Yeah.
co-opting of different people's platforms and different people's, styles or whatever, that it's a different world. It's a world unto itself, right? But when you're in a theater, you need to have that those folks that there's a lot of theater groups, the people that will get together and they'll be like, all right, let's do this. We'll write this movie, or you write the movie and we'll all act in it. And that's how I met my husband. His group, it was all a group of actors. He wrote the play and they all in his class performed it. And
Oh, wow.
they went out to multiple theaters and then multiple, what's it called? Theater festivals. And they performed this in different states. They performed it here. So I do believe that there is more of a collaborative environment in the theater than there is in that way, right? Because filmmaking is collaboration any way you cut it.
Sure.
But in that familial sort of way where it's not me, all me, because when you're on stage, there's no cut, do it again, cut, do it again. No, you rely 100% on that person's energy, their pacing, their timing, and the fact that they're just as prepared and just as solid, and they've got to show up for you, right? There's no phoning it in. There's nobody in your ear feeding you lines, and there's none of that. And so I think that's almost like, it's kind of like going to artistic war together, right? Because you're
Yeah.
on the lines and you have those people matching you and being there for you. And it really does kind of develop a familial bond, again, for good and for bad, right? Because we are
Yeah.
on a polarity spectrum and not everybody gets along. But in the end, when you realize like you're all taking a bow together, you're all showing up together. And without one, it doesn't happen, right? So I love that about the theater. And I have always found the theater to be a place for misfits and people who don't really feel like they fit in anywhere else, to express themselves through story, through music, through dance, however they want to do it. And the theater really allows for all of it, and which I love.
My wife and I love Broadway. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret here that not many people know about.
Okay.
I've always, if I sit up and I sort of dream about like what box did I not check in my life,
Yeah.
I would have liked to have, made an effort to be on Broadway in some way, shape, or form. But here's the secret. There was a time where I worked for a company called Bear Stearns. It
Oh,
was
wow.
a financial group out of the city, and we were mandated that a certain percent of our compensation on an annual year, if you were senior managing director in the firm, had to go to charity, non-negotiable. And so there were a couple of ways you can do that. You can pick nothing, and they would just make that deduction at the end of the year from your year-end compensation. They'd say, hey, we donated to these 10 different things, and you were part of this. Great. You can choose your charity or charities, and they will make that distribution on your behalf. So they didn't allow you to collect the money and then prove you did it. Like they took it and did it.
Wow.
And so my wife and I went to see Rent, one of the many times we saw Rent. And at the end of the show, they get up and go, hey, look, they do the whole Broadway Cares thing. Like we're raising
Yeah.
money, we're doing this. And, if you donate this much, we get that. If you donate this much, you get that. And if you donate, I forget what the number was, but if you donate this much, you can come to a rehearsal and participate in a rehearsal.
Whoa.
Okay. And I was like, and then we're going to give you a line, or we're going to give you a line in a song. And I'm like, fuck that. I'm not rehearsing. I want to be in the show. Right. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, I think the number was 10 grand and you could be in a rehearsal. I'm like, I bet you for 50 grand, I could be in one show. And all I want to do is be a part of this group. Goes, will I lose my dignity? Will someone? And just be a part of that round. And I'm like, I want to be in this, in the clothes, like the long jacket, and just, looking up into the sky. The next year, Bears. And so I was working on somebody who knew somebody that was a part of that production. And I had to make my donation before this idea came up. So I was working on it for next year, and Bear
Wow.
Stearns crashed. And I was never able to make that happen. But I could have bought my way on stage for like 30 seconds for one line on like a Thursday matinee show or something. I would have figured it out. But I would have
Yeah.
had I would have had half the theater. It would have been great. It would have been my check the box moment for sure. But we'll see. Life's not over yet.
What over, Vic? You don't know
No,
when
you
that
don't.
day is going to be.
You got to make some
Everybody
stuff
says to me,
happen.
"Oh, that ship passed for me," and I actually wrote a movie called Ships Passing,
Okay.
and I said,
What's it about?
the, "Well, it's a woman who is struggling with alcoholism. She ends up meeting a stranger who changes her life, and you come to find out he struggled with the same thing, but he takes her through his journey. She learns to live again, and this is like two random strangers meeting in Central Park, right? Um, but the point being that she comes to find out that life is not over, right? You could lose your marriage. You could, her ex-husband was now moving into another, he could marry a much younger girl, like all of these things. And she thought that it's the end of the world. She had no job. She was all of these things. Um, and she learns through this friendship that life is not over, that opportunities constantly coming your way, but you have to be open to see it. Not just open, but as you said earlier, willing to adapt. Those pivot moments where you're like, I gotta jump, right? This is gonna happen, but I have to jump. And am I gonna sit here in my cushy little chair and be like, okay, I'm safe here? Or am I gonna have the guts to jump and see what happens? That's
You gotta jump. I have so many conversations with people about this topic. So glad you brought that up, and I'm so glad you mentioned it in the way that you did. You got to jump.
yeah,
First of all, jumping's not for everyone. I learned a long time ago, not everybody thinks the way I think. Not everybody sort of is, and I said this in a post maybe a week ago or so, where I was like, I was always willing to take chances. Maybe I was just too stupid at the time to realize the risks I would take, and whatever it was, I took them. I still take them. I like to say I'm not stupid, but I take them, I calculate them, but I'm always willing to sort of move towards it. But it does take a certain part of somebody's DNA. And I think you said something earlier about confidence. I think if people work on their confidence in some way, shape, or form and find something that they can grow their confidence in, you happen to find it in dancing. Yeah. And boy, I can really understand it, because my wife and I took dancing lessons exactly 3 years ago in preparation for my daughter's wedding. I was absolutely horrible. I think Ben Stiller in Along Came Polly it would have been a great improvement if I looked like that. But I could see, when you see people who are really confident, I mean, not confident, but competent in ballroom dancing,
yeah,
confidence that just gets exuded through the posture and the movements and the precision, but the fluidity, because you can't be precise and fluid without being confident. And I think if people can find their spot where they find their confidence and learn that is repeatable in everything else that you do, that's the superpower. I tell people, for myself all the time, Angelique, that the best thing that happened to me was I was a chubby kid who lost a lot of weight. And I did it 2 pounds a week, eating right, going to the gym, getting in shape, going from the keg to the 6-pack. And it just that gave me confidence, but it taught me that everything's a process.
yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight. You got to work on it. You keep putting in, you work on it, but that confidence comes through. And then you say, oh, I did that. I could just do that over here. It's going to be the same thing. I'm going to do it again. What have you found? I maybe put words in your mouth that say you found your confidence in dance, but now you're able to carry that through. How's that impacted everything else that you do?
When you believe in yourself on any level, and you have seen what happens when you put all faith in you, in the machine, in the mind, in the body, in the spirit, you become unstoppable, because you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that that is a repeatable formula. Now, will you climb to the greatest heights of whatever? I don't know. Never underestimate the power of your mind. Never underestimate the power of faith and belief. And when you dump all of that energy into a thing, whatever it is, a belief. And, here's the thing, Vic, that I think happens to a lot of people. They don't really understand that there's a threefold process to achieving success, because it happens in your mind first, right? If you don't have the belief in your dream or the confidence that you can make your dream happen, it's because there's a belief system that says underneath, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, this can't happen to me, whatever story that comes from somebody's trauma, right? Because the drama in our life is informed by the trauma in our life. So when we don't have the belief or the confidence that we can execute on something, we've shot ourselves in the foot before we've ever gotten out of the gate. Why? Because looking at an affirmation and hoping and wishing and praying, that is not how you execute. You execute through action, because energy moves, right? In order to create anything and make it manifest in life, any dream, any vision, any heart's wish, if you will, you have got to focus that energy and intention, but not just focusing it with a hope and a wish and a prayer. You've got to change that belief system and know beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is yours.
Yeah.
The Bible, when Jesus says, ask and you shall receive, but then believe that it's been given. Mm-hmm. That's the right. That's the part everybody forgets. If you don't believe that it's yours, that have the confidence that you can see it through to the end, that whatever it is, whatever form it's going to come to you in, you're going to go with it, then it's going to be really, really hard to get to that level. And that's where people give up, my friend. People
That is
give
the
up
first
because,
toll gate for sure. I mean,
yeah,
I don't mean to cut you off, but that's first toll gate for sure, because if you can't establish that, the next step of it is impossible. And so once people have this belief structure, which is hard to get, by the way, it's not easy.
very,
And if there's anything I think that you and I can leave behind here is that wherever you find your confidence, it's repeatable in the other things that you do. It's the
that's right.
same. The ingredients are the same. The output's different. Maybe sometimes the input, but the process to finding that and bringing that confidence along with you is the same. But I have a
That's right.
big thing I talk about all the time is productivity versus activity. A lot of people, when they're trying to accomplish the next thing in their life, if there are 10 steps to the process, they'll immediately cherry pick the ones that make them comfortable and don't make them uncomfortable, maybe because they're not as proficient in them, or they have to, find somebody who is to shore that area up or whatever it is. And then but those things aren't those things are activity. Those aren't productivity. So it's important as you're executing to align the things that you think are going to really move the ball. I have a great friend. He's a great technologist. He's looking to do something. And we were talking, he was running the pitch past me, and he said, I did this, and I got this platform, and I did all of these things. And I said, hey, this is cool. What do you want to accomplish? What's the end game? And he locked in on me. And he went, that's the question. I said, I know you're
Oh,
technically competent in all of these things, so you've retreated to the things you can control.
yeah,
But once you have this building built, you have to say, hey, I'm gonna rent the building. These are what the apartment's going to be like. Here's the map and what it's going to cost. Here's who's going to build it. Instead of just you're the architect, you're the pencil drawer. Do you
yeah.
find in your life, as you've taken this confidence and you're moving towards things, because I still personally struggle with that myself. I catch myself. Like, I'm working on the wrong thing. Okay, let's
Yeah,
refocus. Do you find yourself having to regroup there?
all the time. I think the thing we do not teach people that I do think needs to be taught is our success is a process. We are not all supposed to reach anything's greatest heights in our 20s, right? Some of us are here to do something in the 20s, the 30s, 40s, the 50s, the 60s. And we may be also here to do multiple things, right? Not just one thing. We have other things that interest us and other things that we have to get moving. So I do find that it can be really difficult at times to stay that course and find the confidence when you're trying to reinvent, when you're trying to move into the next thing, when you're trying to get to the next level, or as your friend, really see what is the end game. What are you trying to get to? Because truthfully, I don't think there is an end game a lot of the time, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think we spots along the road, but then all of a sudden the road keeps going, right?
Right.
We rarely get to the place on the side of the road and stay. And that's good because that means that we're constantly evolving and we're constantly moving forward. Somebody said to me the other day, and I thought that this was really interesting. They said, well, I have to listen to these ascended masters and these people who know better than I do. And, they know everything. And I said, well, how could they know everything when we live in a universe that's constantly evolving? You can't know everything if everything is changing and everything is morphing and everything. What you need to know is that you have absolute power to adapt and change and evolve and acquire information that will help you survive and thrive. So if you know these things and you know how to operate in that world, you will always find your way. Always. And I'd say this another thing too, but people say right now I'm going through a dark time. Good. Go through a dark time because when you're in the dark, that's when your heart gets to talk. Your eyes can't see. Sometimes your ears, if you notice in the dark, they get really whoa. All of a sudden your ears can hear things that you don't want to hear.
That's exactly right. That's the
And
beauty of human.
And that's where the heart gets to shine, because the heart's like, hey, I am the only one that can lead you through the dark, because you can't see anything. You don't know what's coming. You got to feel your way through it. And I feel like so much of life is feeling our way through it. And it's not always fun. It's not always a great outcome. I've had to pivot. I've had to let things go, and say, you know what, maybe this isn't it. And let's go down this road and see what this is. Or maybe this isn't it right now. Let's just put this on a back burner and see if we can rejigger this, and go. So I feel like, your brain has to constantly be reevaluating and going for it, and not being hung up on the one outcome, because you don't know what that's going to look like, right? You just
Yeah,
have
no,
to.
it's a great point. It's a great point, and I'm completely aligned with you. And I hope folks that are listening are going to rewind and go back and pick up these cues, because the whole purpose of this show is to leave breadcrumbs trail behind for people who may be going through it, who may be looking to get some insights about somebody who's been a couple of steps ahead, if not a couple of miles. Hey, you have like almost 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. And I'm not sure what you're doing on your other, maybe it's 26, 27,000. Is this something you consciously went out to market yourself? I mean, like, how did, what period of time did you do that? And what's the purpose of it?
Oof. So no, I've focused a lot of my energy on LinkedIn, mostly because a good friend of mine, I said to him, I have my book coming out, and I was coming up against agents and managers. Well, you don't have a social following. You don't have a following. So,
Mm-hmm.
how are you going to get a book? How are you going to get a book? And of course, I'm sitting here saying to myself, right, because now we're living in a world where you have to do everything. There's no more people doing the marketing for you, the PR, you have to do everything. I got to talking to a friend of mine, and he said to me, if you want people to read, go to LinkedIn, because that's where people are reading, right?
Yeah.
He's not to say you can't have tremendous success on these other platforms with book talk and all of that. Sorry, I my nose.
Oh, it's okay. I'm sorry. You're still a little sniffly.
Still sick. Still sick. And but he said try it out there first and see what happens. As long as you get one platform that you can, and you really put the consistency and the time into it, you'll see what you can pull out of it. So back in April is really when I started. Now I've been on LinkedIn for 16 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And in 16 years, I had about 3,500 followers. Didn't really do much with it. It just kind of sat there. Every now and then I'd be like, hey, behind the scenes of this and that. But then I did it. And I got this book by Justin Welsh, and I read it, and I saw kind of some tactics and techniques that people were using. But one of the things he focused on was consistency.
Yeah.
You've got to be consistent. And when you find something that works for you, you have to stay with it, right? So I went for it, and I could get super choked up, but I am so grateful for that
Yeah.
audience on the platform, because they showed me that I could do this, and they show up. And, there's many times that I'm talking about the same crap over and over and over, but they're still coming, and they're offering their advice, and they're talking about their experiences, and they're sharing it. And it became this really beautiful community. And, LinkedIn has its downside as well. I was also
Sure.
stalked. Why I told you, so glad you're not crazy. Um, I had these 20 somethings going after me like I've never experienced in my life. And I thought, my God, like, what is wrong with this world?
Take the
Um,
compliment, move on.
Oof, I just couldn't. And, then there's the tear down stuff where,
Oh,
God
that's
forbid,
horrible.
people have a little success. Everybody tries to tear you down. But if you can ignore it and move through the noise and keep yourself single-minded focused, right? There's a lot of benefit there. And so I would say it was 8 months till I got to this point.
It's
And
super
I
quick,
am,
by the way. It's really,
yeah,
I mean, if you told me that took you, many years, I would have still said that's amazing. But to do that, and you are consistent, and your writing messages are great, and your engagement is great, and heck, here we are,
right,
right? Like, I mean, here we are talking like a couple of old friends about our life and experience, and sharing some thoughts and ideas, but from the platform, right? Because I was interested in what you had to say. Clearly, a lot of it aligns with what I believe and think, because we all search for, what do they call that? Confirmation bias. Yeah, yeah, I like what she has to say. That's how I feel too, right? So yeah,
right.
let me see where her DNA was formed, and how that all came about. But
From
and
this,
here we are, and then we're sharing, sort of our camaraderie and thoughts of, and how we think of things.
yeah,
I'm touched that you're touched by it. I really am, because again,
right.
I get it. I've built the 10,000 miles podcast, pardon me, to 22,000 subscribers since March of this year.
There you
I still
go.
don't know what the heck is going on. I can't even
Yeah,
believe it.
no,
I pushed
that's my,
out not only on YouTube, but I have the subscription service that streams the audio to every podcast platform in the world. I
yeah.
got people listening in countries that, like, why did that dude in Jordan listen? And then I looked, then I'm like, well, was that a bot? Well, no, it was an hour, and they listened for like 48 minutes. Okay, well, that wasn't a bot,
No,
or, what's happened? Because, people come in through them now that I'm monetized, and the advertising, you get flipped all over the place. But I made my first $33, by the way, in monetization. So
oh, God.
so it's great. But
Yeah,
again, any money I would make from this, by the way, was just going to go back in to promote it and create other cool environments and buy equipment and do whatever and just make the show always look better. I don't have any dream of being Joe Rogan by any stretch of the means, but I like learning. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Hey, if you don't mind, I want to redirect this a little bit, because we really haven't yet talked about your writing and the projects that you're working on.
right.
So let's first talk about this book,
Yep.
and then we're gonna move on into other areas. Tell us about this book that you've either written or writing.
So the one that I've written, like there's three actually. That's a
Okay.
sci-fi fantasy, and it's a three-part series that I then adapted into a scripted series for, streaming services. Um, so I haven't yet published it, mostly because I struggle with, do I want to try to do the traditional route of publishing, or do I want to do it on my own? Uh, Part of my, again, personality, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but because, it's not a traditional form of storytelling. And, I come up against, well, you're going to have to fix this and you're going to have to
Yeah.
change that. And no, I'm not. I don't believe I will. I believe what I'm going to have to do is create an intense marketing campaign and put it out myself as the story wants to be told, because
Hmm.
I'm not really into the whole conformist thing. And I do believe that there are things that can come into the world and be different, right? And we don't all have to constantly fall into the same formulaic thing. And we've proved this in film a lot. Film proves this when it goes that people go off formula and they do some wild and crazy stuff.
Yep.
Uh, but we'll see. I mean, I may change my mind as I go along and say, okay, I'll do a little bit of an adjustment there. The other book I have is a Keep Shining book, which is the motivational book that is based on a lot of the stuff that I write on LinkedIn, and it's twofold. It's twofold. They work together, meaning I've had this stuff written in all of these journals and stuff that I've had for years, and thoughts and ideas and my feelings about stuff, and so I put it all in there. And it's essays, prose, and poems about that journey, the sacred journey that within. And I get asked on LinkedIn all the time. They're like, "Can you put this in a book? Can you put this in a book? Can you put this in a book?"
I love it.
Hell yeah, you know what? I will put it in a book. And I get these beautiful messages from people all the time telling me they print out my stuff and they carry it with them. And I thought, maybe you don't need to do that, and maybe I'll get you something that you could take and you'll just have all of it, plus stuff that I haven't published out in the world. Um,
I'm going to show you my book that I put out this year.
nice.
It's a
What's
book on leadership. I did put it out myself. This was just to check the box.
okay?
But, I'm a big fan of leadership style. I've studied a lot of people. I've read a lot of books. Mine is called The Lucky 13, Definitive Set of Core Competencies for Great Leadership. But the reason I want to show it to you is that I wrote it, and then I had friends and colleagues read it and give me feedback and edit it.
Yeah.
And then, my wife is a closet grammar queen, and she's very, very good at it. And so I had somebody help me publish this up in on Amazon, and I printed a couple of author copies just before I actually released it. And I gave the book to my wife, and I said, "Hey, can you read this?" And, you haven't really read it. It's not a lot it's 150 pages or so. It's an easy read.
Yeah.
And I said, and just take this highlighter and anything you find that you think is, something I should be correcting. And just let me know. And so I was away on a business trip, and I come back, and she didn't know she could write in the book, but I have a picture of this, Angelique, I'm going to send you.
Yeah.
There's like these little blue stickies with a note on the sticky in like the first 30 pages. And the book became like this thick, because, this is like 3 inches thick, because she's like, and I look at it, I go, holy cow, I'm an idiot. Like, what's going on here? How could this be? I've had so many really smart people help me in the proofreading, like at least 3 layers. And I'm reading through her comments, and I'm like, well, okay, I could understand what she said, but what I'm saying is not wrong. Well, I understand why she would say this, but that's not my voice. That's her voice. And here's where we connect back to what you're saying about everything, you got to change this. So you do that. So we were debating it, and she said to me, hey, if you asked me and you're not going to take my changes, why'd you bother asking me? I said, no, I asked for your feedback. Whether I'm going to take them or not, you have to let me find my way through this, right?
Yeah.
And I'll decide, because if it changes my voice, I'm going to opt not to do it. I say things in a certain way. I'm not,
Right.
grammatically incorrect, but I have a style of speaking. And if it changes my voice, I'm not going to do it. So, it got a little tense. And I finally said, she just said to me, I just don't want you to look stupid. And I said, well, am I stupid? Now I'm taking offense, right? Am I going to look stupid? She's like, you know what I mean? So I found this editing service. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I sent them the manuscript, the book in its sort of formatted, almost final format. They turned it around in 5 days, and it came along with the person who did the editing, recorded a video.
Wow.
That first said, hey, my name is so-and-so, and this is what I did. Really enjoyed it. Great topics, great structure. There are a lot of ways to write, and this is something I didn't know about. Maybe you do. There are a lot of styles. Like if you wrote something for Harvard Business Review, they have a style template and format that you have to use, the way you use punctuation and analogies and this and that. There are a lot of things you can and can't do. I put your book in what's called Chicago style. It's a certain way the book is laid out, but it's also a certain use of punctuation. And I was able to leave your voice in, but it's the root of all other styles, like most styles. And so I was like, wow, I really learned this. Well, the book is 1,000 times better. It didn't change my voice in the least. It enhanced my voice in a couple of spots in a really way. I'm like, oh, well, that's much more articulate than maybe I would have, because they sent me back a Word document, one with all the changes tracked and accepted, and another with them just tracked so I can go through them one at a time.
Yeah.
The reason I mention it, if you want to put this out by yourself, there's an easy path to do it. The learning curve is a little bit, but maybe consider an interim service like that. And it was inexpensive. It was hundreds of dollars, not thousands.
Wow. Because when I went
Yeah.
to Rizzi, they are expensive. And, you know, I don't mind, like, some people were quoting me 1,500, some people were quoting me 3,000 to edit. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's a lot. It's a
I
lot.
don't know how long your book is, but I think this thing cost me $400.
Yeah. I don't think the Keep Shining book would cost me a lot, but that Blackout's 350 pages.
Yeah,
It
that's
was
twice the
originally,
size of my book. So,
yeah, it was originally 600,
okay.
but I broke
So
it up
what's your
in,
goal for these books? You want to turn them into a series and,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's definitely going to be the, the end game for those books.
Okay.
I needed the books to be the books because I needed all that black backstory and to flesh everything out and to really be able to be free to build that world and build it in a way that somebody could go see it, read it, and get all of that information. And you really can't do that in a series the way you can with a book.
Yeah.
You do need a for that. And also, I wanted people to go on a spiritual journey, which is what this book actually takes you on. And I
Okay.
delve into civilizations and I go through, I mean, I've read everything like Emerald Tablets, the Atrahasis, the Anula Eilish, the Sumerian King Tablets. I mean, I on and on and on and on and on. Barely P. Hall, like I've read my library back there's crazy, right? But I do feel mythology, and Joseph Campbell actually knew this when he was telling the monomyth, you know, is that he understood that the mythology really does outline our journey, the human journey. And it does it repeatedly, right? And it does it in this very formulaic way. And so if you write something in, you know, where you are taking people on this adventure, you are literally taking them through a transformative journey, whether, you know, they get something out of it or not. Maybe they will get something beyond what's on the page. Maybe they're just going
Hmm.
to get page. But that's the piece about this particular Blackout that I love. And I am, I don't want to ruin that by making it so, you know, formulaic that I take it now out of the ensemble piece of it, because part of it is about unity consciousness, right? It's not just a one protagonist story, it's all of us. We're all in the story of how do we survive this earth thing and how do we get out of here somewhat unscathed so that we can all thrive and survive and, you know, whatever legacy we leave behind is a positive one, you know? So I don't know. We're gonna see what I'll do. I don't even know what I'll do, right? I may come across some editor or whatever who changes my mind. This is why I do appreciate my journey because I cannot tell you definitively, right? Until the moment strikes and then I'm like, oh, that's it. That's the one.
I love it.
And I have yeah, yeah, everything.
Great. So what's you doing any theater work, or you putting on any productions or anything like that going on? Tell us about Star Films.
So right now we're doing a few docu-series actually. We don't have
Okay.
any theatrical productions on deck, although I do have a script that I love and I would love to get it made. A girlfriend of mine wrote it. And if anybody knows anything about me, I love period pieces. Those are my jam. So she wrote this and it was similar to An Affair to Remember, only it was, yeah, this one's called Grand Central. So I'm excited. Um, but we have a docu-series that we have in development. Actually, it's funny. After this, I get on the call for that. We have another, actually, we have two docu-series, possibly a third. I have to read the book though. The gentleman whose story that I got this brought to me by a friend, and he wrote a book about his story. We had a lovely meeting with him, and so now I'm like, okay, maybe there's a third one we're gonna put on deck for that. And then also with Star, we have Ma Belle, which is the film that I wrote that we have that in development. Also another one, ironically, the aunt that I told you about that was yelling
Mm-hmm.
with
Yeah.
the Top Gun. She has an amazing story that takes
Of course
place
she
in
does.
she worked for Cinecittà in Rome, and she made costumes for Anna Magliani and Sophia Loren.
Whoa.
And yeah, she's what a her story. But she met her husband, my uncle, who I loved, may he rest in peace. And her family didn't want him to marry her. That they didn't want him because they were going to America, and they
Yeah.
were like, "No, nobody stays behind. We're all going to America." And they're, so it became this crazy story about how her family tried to like sabotage them. But a year, she leaves. She goes to the United States. She gets everything together for her marriage, and she ends up going back a year later, and she marries him. So it's this beautiful love story, but there's all this crazy stuff where they try to sell her to some American guy. I mean, my family's so,
What? Oh my
yeah, yeah.
gosh, it's so
They're nuts.
crazy.
I mean, and I'm telling you, it's on both sides. My dad's family is crazy. My mom's family is crazy. My dad is just more. Yeah. And it's like, I have no idea how I became grounded, It's like maybe the crazy, like, shorted itself out.
It definitely short circuited, no doubt about it.
Yeah. But I mean, I
But
have my moments where I could go crazy like everybody else. But, so we're also in development with that. That's called Mia Storia. And, yeah. And then we actually have something with Arthur Murray that we've been doing, which we'll see if that goes off. So there's a lot of really cool projects on deck and on this slate, which is crazy because people always send me their stuff, and I'm like, I always have to apologize to say, listen, we're not in the market for any new projects right now. You do have to focus on the ones that you have to get them out there. Otherwise, nothing will ever get done.
yeah,
You'll
that's for
always
sure.
bring stuff in. Yeah, you've got to be able to take it in, develop it, get it into pre-pro production, post-production, put it out. Go get the development deals. And we have some really great people that we're working with now that have these great development deals with different networks. And so I'm excited to see what 2025 brings for STAR. I think STAR is going to have a little bit of a turnaround for itself as well, not just
Good.
me.
I know Netflix is building that big complex in New Jersey.
I see. Yeah.
They bought out that old, I think it was an Air Force base, right in Monmouth County there, and they're expecting a lot from it's a giant place. So they're going to be building a ton of sets there. It'll be neat. Be cool that
I
there's
like
films in New Jersey. That's neat.
I like the idea that this side of the world is taking on some of that because it's really cool here. Like you get the weather, you get a lot, I know they have beautiful weather all year around, but that's boring to me.
Yeah, you
I
need
like the change.
foliage. You need
Yeah,
good stuff.
yeah.
Angelique, I have had a great time getting to know you a little bit more today, and more importantly, letting the audience get to hear your story.
Thank
I think the takeaways here from is that you are the consummate professional. I was moved by how touched you are by the audience that you've acquired. I could tell you from reading things and reaching out to you myself that you've earned it. And so keep doing what you're doing. Keep me posted on what's going on the film side. Let's stay in touch. You now
Sure.
have another fan, so this is good. And
Friend.
but I'm not a maniac, which is the best kind of fan. So it's
You're a
really,
friend.
really great.
You're
Yeah.
not a
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have an
yes, and
amazing day. Feel better. Take a Sudafed, as my wife would say, or a Zyrtec, because in her world, everything's allergies.
she's
And
probably
I hope to talk to you soon.
thank you so much, Vic, and I appreciate you having me on your show. This was great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.